Thank you all again for joining us for this program of the International Northeast Region of Women's League for Conservative Judaism. We tonight have a wonderful program with author Elizabeth Bettina, who wrote this fabulous book, It Happened in Italy. And we are going to start the program shortly. But first, I am going to open with a very short Devar Torah. As most of you know, I love, love, love this book by Rabbi Naomi Levy, Talking to God, which was referred to me by Rabbi Ellen Wollens Fields, our esteemed director of Women's League. And I really actually was looking for a very specific prayer this evening because we've been in this ridiculous pandemic now for a year. I can't believe it's been a year. But we have, and we've been through the highs and the lows and the ups and the downs and the high holy days and all of the holidays we've celebrated over the past year on Zoom and these programs on Zoom, and we've adapted, and we now are seeing a light at the end of the tunnel, and we're starting to get vaccinated, and I'm so excited. And I just knew that if I searched a little bit, I would find that Rabbi Naomi Levy had written a prayer for vaccinations. And sure enough, there it was. So, a prayer for receiving the COVID vaccine by Rabbi Naomi Levy. I have been praying for this day, and now it is here. With great excitement, a touch of trepidation, and with deep gratitude, I give thanks to all the scientists who toiled day and night so that I might receive this tiny vaccination that will protect me and all souls around this world. With the pandemic still raging, I am blessed to do my part to defeat it. Let this be the beginning of a new day, a new time of hope, of joy, of freedom, and most of all, of health. I thank you, God, for blessing me with life, for sustaining my life, and for enabling me to reach this awe-filled moment. Amen. With that, I'm going to open, and I'm going to ask our esteemed international president, Debbie Goldich, to bring greetings.
Thank you, Joan. I'm always so happy to be with my friends in International Northeast Region. I feel like it's coming home. So thank you for inviting me, and thank you for inviting me again and again. I love to come. I wanted to share with you that on this coming Saturday night, February 27th at 9:30 p.m. East Coast time, we are joining with Merkaz USA, Merkaz Canada for our Canadian sisters, Women's League, Federation of Men's Club, and the International Kiddush Club. And we are having a wonderful Shushan Purim party. And it's going to be such a fun event, and each one of those auxiliary groups are going to participate and bring some joy to Shushan Purim celebration. And what's most amazing about this for our women is that our entry and our addition to the program was the video that was created for convention, where Chazan Elisa Pomerantz Faro sang with our Zumria choir. And for those of you who don't know, two of your members, Marilyn Cohen and Adele Weinstein, were on our Zumria choir, and they are singing the song and the prayer, Heal Us Now. So it's part of the invitation that came to you on Women's League Week. And if you push the button, you'll see Marilyn and Adele singing with the two cantors. And it is, as I said, our part and entry of this Shushan Purim celebration. It's going to be a fun night, and I want you all to be there. The only other thing I wanted to tell you is that next week on March 2nd and March 4th, we're having membership events open to everyone who holds any kind of a position in your sisterhood. The first one is specifically for small sisterhoods who have fewer than 25 members. And we know that many of our sisterhoods are small like that. It's a special program for them so that they can get some programming ideas, how to use Zoom, and some information for them. The second one is a program on March 4th, and it's open to all sisterhoods and all members. And it's a program, the first hour is Synagogue Sisterhood Relations, Sisterhood Synagogue Relations, and the second one is Leadership Development. And I just want to take a minute and tell you why we're doing those programs. Many of our sisterhoods now, the dues goes directly to the synagogue, and they're not getting their dues payments, and they have issues dealing with the synagogue and the executive director getting their money, or just the problems dealing with synagogues that are closed now during the pandemic. So it's an opportunity for you, if you're having some issues with your sisterhood and your synagogue, to get on and ask us questions, and we can help you work through those details. The second one, leadership development, is because many of our nominating committees are meeting now and they're having trouble filling leadership roles. So please feel free to get on either one of those or both of them. The information to get on the Zoom is on Women's League Week. And as I always say, if you're not receiving Women's League Week, put your name and your email in the chat, and I will make sure that you are subscribed and get it. So that's a little bit about what we're doing, and thank you for giving me those few minutes, Joan, to talk. I love being with you, and I hope that you'll invite me again to come visit.
Thank you, Debbie, so much.
Joan,
yes.
Joan, in addition to those meetings next week, on Tuesday evening, March 2nd, there is a Zoom for sisterhood presidents. And we will be touching on those subjects also in advance of the other meetings. So if you are a sisterhood president and are not on the PresNet, please contact me, tmazer at WLCJ, and I'll get you on the meeting next week also.
Great.
So there's lots of information, and all you have to do is take advantage of it.
Absolutely. So much. Okay, without further ado, I am going to give you a brief introduction to our guest this evening. Our guest, as I mentioned, is Elizabeth Bettina, and she wrote this wonderful book. But that's not all she has done. The book is what started it all, actually, I believe, and she'll correct me if I'm wrong, but the book, I believe, came out in, I believe it was 2008 or 2009. And she'll give you a little bit of the history about how she came to write it. But it was also the inspiration for a documentary called My Italian Secret, The Forgotten Heroes, which was co-produced by her and narrated by Golden Globe winning actress Isabella Rossellini. And which I watched, and it was incredible, by the way. She has met 2 popes and has spoken all over the world. And not only that, she has now created a program called Be the Difference, Never Again. And their mission statement is every good action, no matter how big or small, makes a difference. We all have an opportunity to be the difference. If you were, and I'm gonna give you her tagline, which is, if you are not indifferent, things can be different. And what this does is stories of goodness amidst evil are all around us. And we highlight the inspiring stories of people who are not bystanders, who take action and help others. We can learn from members of the armed forces, those honored at Yad Vashem as righteous among the nations for risking their lives to save Jews during the Holocaust, and local Good Samaritans who just do the right thing. We see good stories on the news and social media and documentaries, movies and books. Perhaps you have your own story. I do. 2 strangers saved Elizabeth's life one night in New York City. They are extraordinary examples of Good Samaritans, and she took them to meet the Pope, Pope Francis. And that's also an incredible story, which I read on the website. But not only that, she has expanded it to programs at 2 universities where the students work on programs that when they travel abroad, they search for stories of the soldiers who served during World War II and are buried abroad, and bring back these stories. And she can elaborate on that a little bit as well. I read about it, but I'm obviously not well versed in it, but it's all extremely interesting. So without further ado, Elizabeth, Bettina. And we are going to open with Elizabeth. Did you want to speak at all first, or did you want us just to open with the, you got to unmute yourself.
There we go. Hi, everybody.
And I'm going to
thank you all for being here tonight.
Speaker view, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pin your video.
Voila.
Okay.
There you go. So thank you all for being here tonight. You'll hear a bit of a story of the goodness amidst evil during the Holocaust and how people made a choice to help people, which is a thing that is very important, especially as we were all learning today. It's a year later that we're in this COVID time, and we're really dependent on other people more than we imagined and we realized, in all walks of life. And that's pretty much it. So we'll, you can put the video on. What you're going to be seeing is survivors who are in the book, and it is a 3-minute video, and you can hear their words of how they survived in Italy. And they are the ones who did. And then I'll tell you how I got to know them and the history behind that time. Go for the video.
Great. Thank you.
I can't get my screen to do this. It won't move over. There it goes.
My father lost a brother, the brother's wife, his own mother, his sister, and his sister's husband. When the camps were open and it was realized that 6 million Jews had been killed, of which 1 or 2 million children, people were so flabbergasted. I cannot imagine any German official helping a German Jew get false identification paper. Italians saved 40,000 Jews, which is not a known fact. I think that the Italians as a whole, who helped us Jews, knew exactly what they were doing.
And this is why I refuse to say that I was in a concentration camp. I was interned, not in a concentration camp.
By single people, by institution, by clerics, many priests and cardinals helped the Jews. Hoffman wasn't the only one who took a chance. A lot of Italians took a chance.
These people opened up their home, they opened up their lives, and they put their lives at risk.
Between the fascists and the Germans, they knew very well that helping a Jew, they would be put against the wall and shot.
For the Italian people, we were human beings, equal to they.
All these Italians, they knew there was no difference between a Jew and a non-Jew for them.
The Italians were people to save you, to help you, and they figured you are just as much a human being as I am.
I wouldn't be here today if I didn't live in Italy.
I'm alive today at 86 because of Italy and the people.
Okay, and I'm just going to jump in with a housekeeping comment, and that if anybody has any questions, I'm going to ask you to please put them in the chat. And when the program is complete, moderators will read the questions to Elizabeth. And that's the way we'll handle questions. Thank you so much.
Voila. So you got to meet all the people that are in the book. Not everybody, but some of them. And you got to hear their own words. Many of them were foreign Jews because I was interviewing people in New York. And they escaped into Italy in the 30s and 40s. So I will give you a little background about me real quickly. I am Italian origin. My grandparents, all four, came from Italy. My parents are classic first generation that don't speak Italian. My mom can get by with some words. I grew up in a place aptly called Jericho, Long Island, and I was born in Long Island Jewish Hospital. So that sort of maybe set me on a path that I didn't know I was going to do. When I was 10 years old, my mom's mom took me to Italy to visit her parents, my great grandparents. So I was taken to this little village in the valley of a mountain. And I saw people that I'd never seen that old in my life. They were in their mid 80s, early 90s. And I spent every summer there as a child in this little farm agricultural village from when I was 10 to 18. And when I say summer, I mean the entire 3 months. So those were my formative years. And I had always heard that some Jews were hidden in the village, qualche ebreo. Some Jews were hidden here during World War II. And I kept thinking, boot of Italy. How did they find from Germany to get down to this little village? Today, in 2021, with a GPS, you still have a tough time finding this village, okay? So if you could put up the PowerPoint and I will show you, the pictures will help tell you the story. And what I need to let you know is most of the pictures that I have, most of the pictures are from the survivors themselves. So next slide, please. This is this, can you go back, please?
Yeah.
Thank you. This is the picture that started me on this incredible, unexpected journey. About 15 years ago, I was back in the village with my grandmother. Now, mind you, I had gone every summer. I lived in Florence as an adult, working in Florence for 6 years. I went back and forth to Italy all the time. I don't think I ever was gone from Italy more than a couple of years at the most, and most of the time I was there at least once a year. My grandmother we switched roles. And grandma was the person who I took care of her passport and her ticket now. She used to take care of mine. We were in the village. One night we were having pizza and someone showed me a book, The Jews in Campania during World War II. This is not a COVID cough, okay? So anyway, The Jews in Campania during World War II. And they open it to this picture. Imagine my surprise when I see this picture of a Orthodox rabbi next to a bishop and police officers as a gentleman holding flowers. And I'm like, what? How could this be? And then I learned more of the story. I knew some Jews, some would be 10, 15, not 1,000. Next slide, please. Look at this. This is a picture of what? A synagogue. A synagogue in this concentration camp. What I learned was that in the church where my grandmother was baptized and married, there was a convent attached to the church. In this little town, there's at least 5 or 6 churches, at least. And every little zone in the town has their church. Mussolini took over the convent in 1940 to make a concentration camp in the town. So the nuns were gone, and these were foreign Jews that were brought to the town. They're having a minion. Where have you ever seen a concentration camp that allowed a synagogue in there with Hebrew writing, let alone it was a convent where the nuns were gone, attached to an active church? Mind you, this is about 100 yards from the house I spent my summers in from when I was 10 to 18. I bet you can't think of that. Where have you ever seen that before? I was shocked. I was shocked. I had never heard of any of this. Couldn't believe it. No one had ever told me this. Now, I think we can also say this. Italians and Jews, they're very similar. Italians are yentas. They know everything. Those little old ladies dressed in black, they know absolutely everything about everything that goes in the town. Why this was never explained to me, I have no idea. And then I learned they didn't think they did anything extraordinary. They thought they were doing what was right. So I'm having dinner and I can't believe what I'm seeing. In another picture in the book, they have a picture and underneath it says the Jewish candelabras. They weren't candelabras. They were what? Menorahs. Okay. Unbelievable things that I start learning that night. It is my last night in the town. The man who gave me the book told me to take his book because he could get another one the next day. I'm reading this book on the plane going back to New York, and I want to turn the plane around and say, how could no one have ever told this to me? So I started exploring a little more and a little more and a little more, and I learned much more about this. This is the history of that time. In the 1930s, many Jews from outside of Italy tried to leave Germany, etc. They couldn't leave because borders were closed. That's a story pretty much everybody knows. So many had heard that Italy allowed Jews in, even if they didn't have a visa, even if they didn't have documents. So they also knew if they got to the Italian-run territories, they would be treated fairly. And that includes going to southern France, other parts of Europe. So that's what people started to do. In the meanwhile, I'm going to stop for a second and make you all understand. In this, it's all wrong. It is wrong for them to be in a camp. It is wrong for any of this to happen. So the framework of this entire conversation is it is all wrong. But in what happened and what was wrong, there was some goodness and there was some respect and some dignity given the circumstances at the time. And that's what must be remembered. So in 1938, Italy did enact the racial laws, similar to the Nuremberg laws, which meant Jewish children couldn't go to school. Jewish children wound up being schooled in their own. The Jews organized and had their own schools. If you owned a business, the business was taken away from you. If you were a professor, you couldn't teach at university. So all these things were happening. But as one woman said, my father had an electronics store, and a chain of them actually in northern Italy, Milan, Torino. He gave it to his workers. Obviously, there was no documentation, because if there was written agreements, everybody could be in trouble if the paperwork was found. So a lot of it was verbal agreements. He gave business to his workers. When the war ended, they gave him back the business, the entire thing, hook, line, and sinker. A lot of people's apartments, the same thing. Their furniture, their items were well taken care of. This does not mean everybody. This means quite a few, the majority, but there also are the horrible stories. So it is not a perfect story. 80% of the Jews in Italy survived. That means 20% did not. So what happens is in 1940, the foreign Jews who were in Italy are taken to concentration camps, Italian style. When we hear the word concentration camp, we all just feel horrible. We know what that means. But you have to see how the Italians ran theirs. Then they also went to something called free internment, that families could live in small towns off the beaten path amongst the Italians. They had an apartment, they had a stipend, they had the same rations as the Italians, and they lived amongst the people. This all happened from 1940 till 1943. On September 8th, 1943, Italy switched sides. But now we're going to go back and talk a little bit more about this. There's a list for September 16th, 1940 of 270 Jews. They are the names of what my friend Ellen said, our high school graduated class, the New York telephone book. They were all foreign Jews. Names like Weintraub, Eisenberg, Einstein, etc. All of these were the names. So if you go to the next slide, you'll see a list, and this is just a partial list of names. Okay, so that is a partial list of names, and this list becomes very important later on, but we were able to find out. Some of the lists were lost because in 1980, Italy had an earthquake. They've since found a few more. This is not the final end all of who was in the town. If you had left the town on September 1st, obviously you're not on this list. If you arrived afterwards, you're not on this list. And I do know of people who were in the town before and after this September 1940 list occurred. Next slide, please. This is Giovanni Paladucci. He was the Questore of Fiume. Fiume is in northern Italy. He was in charge, he was the police officer in charge of foreigners. And he knew what was going on. And he had a bunch of people from his town go to Campania. That's where he was originally from. The bishop was his uncle. So that was that bishop next to the rabbi was this man's uncle. For his deeds of helping send Jews to the village and other things, he was taken to Dachau, where he died the death of the people he saved. So he died in Dachau. He has been honored at Yad Vashem. Mind you, I don't decide who gets honored at Yad Vashem, anything. All I do is report what scholars have done and done their research. So I only report the stories of the witnesses as they told it to me. And if some of their rescuers were honored at Yad Vashem, I tell you that also. So this is all firsthand accounts and my bumbling through this journey of finding this out, totally unexpected. Next slide, please. The gentleman standing in the back with the black shirt is Walter Wolf. He is the first person I ever met who was hidden in Italy. After I had come back at the end of August, it was the holidays, and one of my best friends from fourth grade, Ellen, was in from the West Coast. And where would a nice Italian girl and a nice Jewish girl go out for dinner in New York City? What cuisine would we possibly have? If it's Italian, I'm going to cook. So it was Chinese. And I showed her this book and these pictures, and she looked at me and she said to me, quote, "We knew you were an honorary Jew. We knew there was a reason you grew up in Jericho. Who on planet Earth could understand your grandmother's village, Campania, and the story of being Jewish more than you on this entire planet? Doesn't mean the entire boot of Italy and what happened in Italy, but the village." She said, "You were meant to do this story." So she pushed me to keep looking and searching and send me articles, and one thing led to another, and I had gotten this invitation to hear this gentleman speak at Queens College. It was the middle of the day. I took the day off of work and went to Queens College. He was having his own slideshow presentation. He was talking about his life in Germany beforehand. what happened, and how he got to Italy. Now, wait a minute. He had a slideshow of his pictures of his life in Germany. Really? How many people do you know had their own pictures when they left Dachau or Auschwitz? They were lucky if they left alive, let alone with any mementos of their former life. That was taken from them upon arrival. So Walter had pictures of his life beforehand. He had been arrested on Kristallnacht. Both he and his brother were arrested. His dad had passed away years prior to natural causes, so it had nothing to do with the beginning of the Holocaust. He was sent to Dachau. His brother was sent to Buchenwald. His mother got them out. Why? They were supposed to go study at a yeshiva in Chicago. And at that time in 1938, if you could get out of Germany in 6 months, that's what they wanted. They had not come to the final solution. So the mother got them out. She must have had more chutzpah than anyone I know. She got her 2 sons out. The clock was ticking. 6 months, 6 months. They went to the US Embassy to get what? A visa. And what happened? No visa. They did not give them a visa because they said, after your studies, who's going to guarantee you're going to return? So the next best thing was to go to Italy. They went to Italy. They lived in Milan. In September, when the war breaks out, the foreign Jews are arrested. They're sent to camps. The brother goes to Ferramonte, which you'll learn about later. And Walter winds up going to this camp in the South. He's telling the story. And I have no idea what's going to happen next. No clue what's going to happen next with his slideshow. Because I wanted to know what he knew about camps in southern Italy. Well, much to my complete surprise, the next slide shows my grandmother's village. And I practically eject out of my seat. I'm like, what? How could this be? Okay, keep the slide with Mr. Wolf from beforehand up for another minute. The slide before it, okay? So he's talking about this, and he basically said he was put on a train. He figured, why am I going to a concentration camp? If this was the case, I should have stayed in Germany, my own country. My father fought in World War I. This silly business will end. There's no reason I should have stayed in Germany. I would have been better off. And then these are his words. They are not mine. I have them on tape. He said, going to Campania was like going to a camp in the Catskills, okay? This is Walter Wolf. He forms a little orchestra over there, a string orchestra. Please note how everybody is dressed. If I didn't tell you they were in a concentration camp, how would you know? You wouldn't. You don't see striped pajamas. You don't see a Star of David on the clothes, an armband. You see people in, frankly, better clothes than I see in New York City these days. All right. And they also are healthy. They are eating the same food, the same rations as the Italians. This is one of Mr. Wolf's pictures. Please note all pictures in the presentation. The pictures tell the story better than my words ever can. Next slide, please. Look at this picture. This is a picture taken of all the Jews in the concentration camp on the steps of the church. Those are the doors of the church where the rabbi was before. And the door on the left with the arch, that is the door to the convent. Please note the gentleman in the arch with the white shirt who's tall and bald. He will figure in the storyline later. Now, I want you to look how everybody's dressed. They're wearing their own clothes. They're wearing jacket and tie, many of them. And look at the police officers, especially the one in the middle. Look where his hands are, on his knees. The other gentlemen have their hands in their laps. I see a question. There were no women in this camp at the time. Many of the wives, some could come there and some rented apartments in the village. But this was a male camp solely. in this particular town. So please note how everybody's dressed. Again, if you didn't know this was a camp, there would probably be no indication of this. In this picture is one of the police officers who you will meet in the next slide. What you'll find out in this presentation is I wound up organizing 4 trips back to Italy for survivors so they could meet their rescuers. Many honored at Yad Vashem. So when Mr. Wolf was talking about his time in Italy, and this is one of his pictures, he said he hadn't been in since the 70s. Anyone who knows me well knows my mouth might go quicker than the brain engages to figure out how I'm going to do this. And I said, I will make sure you get back to Italy. I had no clue how I was going to do that, but ultimately I did. I went to the consulate and the Italian tourism board and got the trip sponsored, and we went to Italy. Next slide, please. That's Mr. Wolf in the background with the plaid tie, and the gentleman with the glasses in the forefront, that's Remo Tagliaferri, and he was one of the police officers in that picture. They recognized each other. They embraced like long lost high school, college buddies at a reunion. And Remo says to Walter, Wolf, you were a great soccer player. Ah, they played soccer in the town. I'll explain that in a minute. And Walter turned to him and said, and we thank you because you treated us with respect at a time that the rest of the world didn't treat Jews with respect. The Jews in Campania were able to mingle with the townspeople. They only had to go to curfew at about 8 o'clock at night. They also, the town is in a valley. So the even today, the soccer field is little outside of the town, about a mile. They'd walk there to the way people do today, or they get on their little mopeds to get there. And they played soccer. They played soccer. They had their own orchestra. They even had some little like news flyers printed up. And they mingled with the town people. Next slide, please. This is Ursula. You met Ursula in the mini clip before. Ursula and her family were also from Germany. Ursula and her mom had come to Italy in about 1935, 1936. They were on the northern coast in the Italian Riviera. That's her father. They were there because they knew that that was a good place to go. They were originally from Breslau. They were one of the more wealthier families in the city. They owned an incredible department store, and the mother only wore couture. And Ursula would say her mother would only wear a dress once, and then that would be it. The father came to visit them. He got stuck in Italy when the war broke out. He was taken to Campania, and Ursula and her mom were taken to outside of Perugia. Ursula never knew her father was in Campania. She always knew he was in the province of Salerno, until we were talking and I asked her maiden name because I didn't know her maiden name. And I asked her father's name because there were 2 corns in the book. And sure enough, her father was in my grandmother's village. And Ursula has a little black and white picture with that white little border on it in her possession. And I had a copy in my possession, and it's her father giving the bishop flowers. Next slide, please. This is Ursula when she goes back to Italy. This is Monsignor Schivo. Monsignor Schivo was instrumental in helping save Ursula and her family. So very quickly, Ursula's family story is like many in Italy. What happens is the families are initially separated. The father gets to Campania. Then you could make something called a domanda, a request, and the families would be reunited. You did hear me correctly. The families were reunited most of the time. They did not keep them separated. You will see that time and time again. It doesn't mean all families in all of Italy were reunited, but the majority, okay? So after a while, Ursula's father went to Perugia, in this little town called Città di Castello and was reunited with his wife and daughter, and they stayed there until September 8th, 1943. That's the day that Italy switches sides. So from 1938, 1943, Italy is allied with Hitler, but there are no mass deportations from Italy. There are no deportations according to scholars, period. None out to any German run concentration camp. Nothing terrible is happening in terms of death camps, work camps, ghettos. None of that is happening. The Italian Jews all this time remain in their own homes. There is no Star of David, no J, no armband. They are not in a forced ghetto situation whatsoever. You all have heard of the ghetto in Rome or the ghetto in Venice. That is a different time frame. It is not in the years that we are discussing. So that may have existed and did exist in the past. We're talking the years specifically the 1930s and 1940s. In Mussolini's government, there were many Jews. In his fascist government, many. So according to a woman who is a medical doctor in Rome, she said this, and I think she sums it up best. From 1938 to 1943, we were discriminated against. We were humiliated, but we weren't persecuted where I felt my life was in danger. And I think that's a very good way to put it. And these are her words, they are not mine. An educated female doctor in Rome. She lived through it. These are her words. So Ursula had Monsignor Schiavo honored at Yad Vashem. He even was flown to New York for an event, obviously to Israel. This was an event in Rome with the president of Italy where he was also being honored. How old do you think Monsignor Schiavo is in this picture? In this picture, he is 98 years old. I had the good fortune of meeting Monsignor Schiavo, and when I met him, he was 100, and he was all there. And the bonds between these two were amazing. Ursula met him. She was a little girl. She was a young teenager, 13, 14 years old. Next slide, please. This is Horst Stein, Horst and his jazz orchestra. Horst is the one with the saxophone. You met Horst before. He's the one who said, I'm 86 and I'm alive because of Italy and the people. And he said he refused to say he was in a concentration camp. Horst and Walter Wolf were friends from Frankfurt. They went to the same high school. Now, mind you, there was no communication from these little villages at the time, whatever. It wasn't like somebody said, okay, you do a little string orchestra, we'll do a jazz, nothing. This organically happened. Please note how these men are dressed. Every single one is wearing a jacket and tie. Forget COVID. I can't find people with a jacket and tie on Fifth Avenue. It just doesn't happen anymore. So this is a concentration camp in Abruzzo, which is 2 hours east of Rome. Small town. Next slide, please. This is Horst's father and his mother. His mother is there. The mother was never in a concentration camp. She had an apartment in the village near this town in Abruzzi. His father was not feeling well. The father was not feeling well. What would happen if you weren't feeling well in Auschwitz? We all know that answer. This is Horst's parents. Horst's father wasn't feeling well. He was sent to the spa of San Pellegrino to get better with his wife. Next slide, please. This is visiting day in the village. The other wives are visiting their husbands and sons. Look how everybody's dressed. Please imagine visiting day in Auschwitz, if there was such a thing, and if people were allowed to leave. What would they have said? What would they have said if they left Auschwitz? Next slide, please. This is Ferramonti. It is the camp in southern Italy in Calabria, about 20 minutes outside of Cosenza. This is Rabbi Pacifici. He was the rabbi of Genoa. He would come down all the way down to the boot. Calabria is just before you hit Sicily. It's still mainland Italy. And Ferramonti was the only camp in Italy that was constructed specifically for this purpose. It had 92 barracks, anywhere from 2,000 to 4,000 people. And it depended on what year and what month. So 2,000 to 4,000 people is a town. And 70% were foreign Jews. They were allowed to govern themselves. Please note how everybody is dressed: jacket, tie, hat. And Rabbi Pacifici would come down. He performed weddings in the camp. Yes, you heard me correctly, weddings. And he performed brisses. People got married, people had babies. 21 babies were born in the camp. This was not a work camp, nothing. Next slide, please. Take a look at this picture. What do you see? You see children, and those adults. It's children in school. This was Ferramonti. There were 2,000 people. They organized education. They sent children to school. And Edith Byrne saw this, who was in Auschwitz, and her husband, Fred, was in Campania. And she always said to him he had a picnic in Campania compared to her in Auschwitz. She couldn't believe these children were there. Her little sisters went straight to the oven in Auschwitz. So this was the difference. People left Ferramonti educated. They didn't miss school. Next slide, please. I told you about weddings. Here's a picture of a wedding in Ferramonti, and there are the barracks in the background. This was given to me by Max Kempen. These are his parents in the picture. His mom is the woman on your right with the black hat, and Max's father is standing behind the bride with a hat. Look at how everybody's dressed in their, best clothing for a wedding in a concentration camp. I always want to know the story about the dress. Where did this dress come from? I always think of Gone with the Wind, where someone took down the curtains and made the dress. I want to know the story behind this dress, and I've never been able to figure this out. This is how people lived in Ferramonti. There are many, many more pictures like this. You do see women here. Families were kept together. Families that were separated were reunited coming into Ferramonti. Next slide, please. This is in Potenza, which is about an hour south of my grandmother's village. Remember I said to remember the gentleman that was tall in the arch? He is in the backdrop. There's a girl with a little bow. There's the gentleman there. That is Walter Kleiman's father, and Dr. Kleiman, his wife and children, and these are two families. And to Dr. Kleiman's right is Ava Lepenny. Ava Lepenny was sort of adopted by Dr. and Mrs. Kleiman because her father had gone to try and get them out of Italy. When the war was started, he was advised to head, and he was trying to set them up, and unfortunately he was taken away. And so Ava stayed with the Kleimans. Ava's mom had passed away of natural causes in Genoa. So again, Genoa plays into this. And so they get all taken away. They get down to separated initially. Walter Kleiman's father winds up in Campania. He made a domanda, a request. There are even documents through the Vatican who helped put them back together. So he met up with his wife in the little village of Potenza. They had a son, Walter Kleiman. Walter was born in Italy. They had more children born in Italy. There's a wonderful story about Walter. The mom didn't have enough milk. He had wet nurses. So these Catholic women fed a baby Jewish boy to keep him alive. There was no formula. How is this going to happen? I can't imagine this happening in Germany or any other occupied territory. I wound up meeting Ava LePenny Rosenfeld when I was in Nashville. Okay. I became friendly with some people when I was doing some work in Nashville. Their son was having a bar mitzvah. I was invited to the bar mitzvah. I went to the bar mitzvah. Went to the bar mitzvah. At the bar mitzvah, I was telling people about this story. I didn't know much about it at the time. This was in the very beginning. And they said, we know a woman here who was saved in Italy, and you should talk to her. So they gave me her number. I spoke with her. She said, I would like you to come to my house because I have documents and pictures. She's another one with documents and pictures. Can you imagine this? Okay. So I go to her home. She explains with her husband. He also was from Germany. He was on a kinder transport. He has his own fascinating, amazing story. And she explains Italy and what happens and documents and pictures. And I'm thinking another one with documents and pictures. And then she says, the family I was with, I believe the father was in your grandmother's village for a short while before he joined us. I had the book. I go to that list of 200 plus names and I see Max Kleinman and I look at his birth year and I do the math. He was like 97 years old. And she must have read my mind because this is all happening in split seconds. And she said, he's alive and well. And my head is thinking, I'm changing my ticket. I am going to go and find him. If he's in Chicago, Florida, what have you, I'm going to find him. And she says, he's in New York. He's in Flushing. That's where LaGuardia Airport is. It's right there. My grandmother, who took me to Italy, her house was 2 miles from Dr. Kleinman's house. So 2 days later, when I was back in New York, I was in Dr. Kleinman's house interviewing him. He has a treasure trove of pictures and documents. That's where I meet his son, Walter, and I have extra family. I call Walter Uncle Walter and Aunt Elaine, his wife. All these people, Eva, her family has become family, and ultimately I wound up taking them back to Italy on a trip so they could go back to the places where they were as children. Next slide, please. As I said, not everything was good. There was a lot of bad. This is in Rome. It's in the ghetto, and it is the 16th of October, 1943. It is after September 8th, 1943. So this is when you have the Jews are rounded up and over 1,200 that evening are taken away. But think about this. It is 4 or 5 weeks after the 8th of September. The Jews in Italy pretty much didn't think anything terrible would be happening to them because nothing had happened that 3.5 years into this. So they were still living in their homes. They were still going about their lives in a restricted way with the rations as the Italians had, but they never expected that they'd be deported. And it was around the holidays and they did 1,200, but 8,000 to 10,000 Jews were saved because they were taken into people's homes, into convents, into hospitals. And there's so many more stories that this evening won't give us time for, but you can watch the documentary or learn more. There's so many and documented proof, people who helped honored at Yad Vashem for doing this, saving hundreds. Next slide, please. As I mentioned, I went back to Italy, took many people back to Italy. Here's a group in September, and we have Walter Kleinman, the tall gentleman right in the middle. We're in Ferramonti. Okay, there's Ursula in front of him. There's Edith with sunglasses and a black shirt. There's Ruth Ruth was also in the picture with Walter as a baby. She was the little girl in front of Dr. Kleiman. There's Ava and Eric, the Kempins. It's an amazing story. There's Vince Marmorale, who I worked with, and he is my partner in crime in producing the documentary. Vince is Holocaust expert extraordinaire, and I don't mean just Italy and the Holocaust. I am saying anything about the Holocaust. He knows who signed the document and what color pen they used. This was an extraordinary experience. And one of the things we find out is the Milk Brothers story, because we were all on the local news, and a gentleman happens to catch it, and he said, my milk brother, his mother is one of the people who helped keep Walter alive and has letters from Walter's mother and even Ruth's mother saying, thank you for helping us, okay? And pictures of baby Walter and his parents. He had been looking for Walter for all these years, even looked at him when he was in New York in the 70s, before we had the amazing technology we have to find people. And he even went to the consulate to no avail. It was one of the most amazing things I could ever imagine Walter and Rocco embracing. Next slide, please. We're back to the beginning. This is where it all started, the rabbi picture. So there is the rabbi picture, started us on the journey, and here's everybody back in Campania. We're in front of the door of the church, and there is that convent to the left and that arch. And Walter stood in the arch where his father stood so many years prior. Next slide, please. This is Mercedes. She is a woman who hid Charlotte, who is in the documentary. Charlotte was hidden as a child, and this woman and her family are honored at Yad Vashem, and I was able to have her meet Pope Francis. Next slide, please. This is Mercedes with her daughter Patrizia, showing Pope Francis a picture with her and Charlotte taken at the Simon Wiesenthal Center, because Mercedes and her family were honored by the Simon Wiesenthal Center, Rabbi Heyer and Rabbi Cooper, for their Medal of Valor ceremony a few years ago. And she's also showing the picture of Charlotte's family. So it's when you save one from the Talmud, you save them all. And Charlotte's grandson, who's in his mid-20s, a fine young man, he lives here in New York now. It's just such a great story. And an aside, Mercedes and her family went to Jacob's bar mitzvah in Los Angeles. That is the bond that they kept all these years. So the reversal of roles and the respect of religion. And they went to Jacob's bar mitzvah. It was all documented in the LA Times. Next slide, please. This is me being able to honor and thank the two people in that picture for risking their lives to save mine, but that's neither here nor there. And there's the Good Samaritan parable. So I figured, we're just gonna do the right thing and show the Pope what Good Samaritans mean. And the gentleman who, I'm using the term loosely, who he's unfortunately, he did not know me. He was just walking down the street, saw me and got me, and proceeded to wind up with attempted murder and is in jail. So this was a serious thing. It wasn't just a pocketbook thing. And I thought that these people should be honored. And that's the Pope learning about them. Next slide, please. This is when I took people to meet Pope Benedict. This is what got the ball rolling. I was walking to work one day, and this crazy idea came to me while I'm trying to cross 8th Avenue and not get killed at 8 o'clock in the morning. Well, Walter Wolf is a German Jew, and he should meet the German Pope. It would just make sense. And I had no clue how I was going to do that. And ultimately, I cold called the Vatican. This woman didn't think I was crazy, didn't hang up on me. And she, in turn, helped make it happen. And one thing led to another. When we were able to do it, unfortunately, Walter was not able to travel. And we had other German Jews meet the German Pope. And my Italian grandmothers would never believe I would have met a Pope. Neither would I. And let alone two. Next slide, please. This is Roman Kent. He is in Auschwitz. 6 years ago, I had the good fortune, I was invited to attend the 70th commemoration of the liberation of Auschwitz on January 27th with 300 survivors. And Roman Kent is one of the survivors. He lives in New York, and I had the honor to meet him the first time at the UN when he was the keynote speaker at the UN for January 27th. And I also saw him at Temple Emmanuel, and he was a keynote speaker here at the 70th commemoration. And I can have everybody forward you the link to his 14-minute keynote speech. And at the end of it, he said, quote, "If I had the power, I would add an 11th commandment to the universally accepted 10 commandments. You should never, ever be a bystander." And I've always sort of believed that. I sign my books, "If you're not indifferent, things can be different." And the people who saved my life were complete strangers. They chose not to be bystanders, or you would definitely not be speaking to me this evening. So Roman Kent's words in Auschwitz are very true. And I think today we all understand that you shouldn't be a bystander. There's been so much that's gone on in the last 6 years since I heard those words there from him. And that is a picture of Roman Kent speaking in Auschwitz. And if you're wondering what that is above those famous gates and tower, they had built the biggest tent I have ever seen to accommodate everybody, because it's winter and everybody's a certain age. And it's amazing that 6 years ago, 300 people could travel to Poland with snow outside. It's 0 degrees Fahrenheit. And the 5 years prior, it was held outdoors, and they realized for the 70th that just couldn't happen. It would not be healthy. So I never saw anything so big in my life in terms of a tent. And next slide. And this is how I ended. If you're not indifferent, things can be different. And it doesn't mean you have to stand in front of a Nazi tank or do something crazy. You can just hold the door open for somebody. I guess you can't do that today, but socially distant, but that kind of thing. You can look around and help a neighbor who might be having a tough time for a variety of reasons. And just pay attention to all the things that are going on. And this is something I came up with when I wrote the book, and is printed in the paperback. So it's been something I've been saying since 2009. And that concludes us to the formal part of the presentation.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Did you want us to run the little clip and then we'll go to questions?
Sure.
Okay. We just have one more little clip we're going to run.
This is a clip of the documentary that I made that you can see on Amazon Prime.
Toby, is there sound on that?
There you go.
I'm not a man to hold back from a fight.
I put myself to work to help Jews flee the country. That's when my travels started to Rome and Assisi.
If the Nazis found out, they will kill him immediately on the spot. He was risking not only his life, but also his family.
The door swung open and a voice screamed into the church. The Germans are coming, they're coming. And suddenly, someone grabbed me. There were lots of people hiding, including my mother.
My father went to see a grand lady, La Marchesa Gallo, who had immense fans. She said, of course, hide you.
It's hard to explain why they did it.
A life can hang by a thread. It's a world where you must do good, but don't talk about it.
Fabulous. Thank you, Elizabeth.
You're welcome.
And and I won't give it away, but the name of the bicyclist, I don't recall.
Gino Bartoli.
Oh my goodness gracious. What a story. If anybody has any questions, if you would put them in the chat. We had one that was answered from Marilyn, the women in the picture. And Elizabeth answered that while she was talking. And someone else recommended another novel. I don't know if you've heard of that one, Elizabeth, Our Darkest Night, about the Italian Jews in Venice. Venice, no, by Jennifer Robson, I believe it is.
No, thank you for bringing that to my attention.
So another one is out there. Brava, Elisabella. Beautiful. No questions from anyone?
Not really a question.
Unless people are typing. It looks like some people are typing. So let's go.
Okay. There is, now I can see everybody on speaker view here. Rochelle Packman is on, and she is the daughter of people who were saved in Italy. So Rochelle, why don't you click in and say something? Because this story is about you. Rochelle, click in.
Doing that, okay.
Unmute.
There she is.
There you are.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Brava, Elisabella. If Elizabeth is an honorary Jewish person, I am an honorary Italian person. I'm so glad that you all got to meet Elizabeth. She is one of the most energetic, passionate people I have ever met, as you can see by her work. What I'd like to share with you, what Elizabeth would like me to share with you, is how the influence of the Italians that saved the Jews during the Holocaust has had a continuing effect in the next generations. My father was Yugoslav, and he was fortunate enough to be able to escape to Bari during the war when the Nazis invaded Sarajevo. And he survived the war in a DP camp in Bari with his relatives for several years. And he made his way here. And I was raised with, he never sat me down and said, listen, you have to understand that all things Italian are to be respected and revered and admired, but I always understood that somehow. And it's because I absolutely understood that without the Italians and what the Italians did, my father and his family would not have survived, and I wouldn't be here with you right now. So I grew up with a great, great, great reverence for all things Italian. In high school, I studied Italian. I was the only person in the class whose last name didn't end in a vowel. And I was the star student. I was the president of the Italian club. And when I graduated West Hempstead High School, I earned the Sons of Italy Award and a scholarship. And the department chairman, who was an Italian man, said, only in America does a nice Jewish girl get an Italian award. So I've embraced all things Italian. I've studied Italian, I can speak Italian, and I have actually imparted that love and affection to my children, especially one of my sons, who is fluent in Italian and who had an amazing internship 2 summers ago at the US Embassy in Rome. So I've spoken at Sons of Italy meetings, I've spoken with Elizabeth at presentations, and what I'm here just to kind of represent is the far reach of the love and affection and care that the Italian people had for the Jews, and how that has influenced the next generations. Because truly without that, I don't know that my father would have survived.
That's fabulous. That's great. Thank you so much.
And I have been so blessed from all the amazing people I've met because of this. Rochelle and I met and was like, we had been to school together, and she has been a part of my life. And I've gotten to know her cousin who was saved in Italy, who lives down the block from me here in the city. So it just kept going. And we met when my book had first come out, and I was invited to the synagogue, and this woman comes up to me, and I felt like it was a long lost friend. We're the exact same age. It's just amazing. So I've met so many wonderful people. My life has been enriched by so many, and I have extended family all over. And that's part of it. When you save one life, you save them all. Well, I got the good fortune of getting to know Rochelle, okay, and her family. And I've stayed at her house on Long Island, and of all things, she lives like a mile from my niece, okay? So even in COVID, we managed to see each other out socially distanced outside in a backyard.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, and we could go on and on. There's so many stories like this.
One question came up. What are you working on now? Anything? I know one thing she's doing is she's working at the Javits Center when the vaccine helping out with the vaccine goings on there, but I don't know what else she's working on.
I work with the Intrepid Fallen Heroes Fund. It is, if you've ever been to New York and you've seen the Intrepid Sea Space Museum on the west side, the Fisher family has a lot of philanthropic arms, and one is Fisher houses on bases, which is sort of like Ronald McDonald's houses. So military families don't have to pay for anything when they are have a loved one who's in the hospital, whether it's a child, a mother, a father, etc. The other part is the invisible wounds. Now we've all understand invisible a lot more in the last 11 and a half months. There are a lot of things called invisible wounds, and the ones I'm referring to are traumatic brain injury and post-traumatic stress. And when you hear that active duty are brought back and are being treated at Walter Reed, they are being treated at the Intrepid Center at Walter Reed. And there's satellites around the country. There's also one for amputees is in San Antonio. So I work with them, and I'm working on the Be the Difference project in an incredible way with which Joan, you so eloquently stated before, with American schools who are based abroad, and it can also be done virtually, where students learn why they have the day off called Memorial Day or Veterans Day. And it's not just so they have a barbecue, or it's the beginning of going to the beach or the Hamptons or what have you. It is not that. And I can send a 10-minute and a 12-minute video of the two schools who do it, American schools who do it in Rome and Florence, which I think you should all take a look at. And students have done it from, again, pre-COVID days, from their computers, and learned about someone who never came home, who's approximately their age. The average age in the American cemeteries in Rome and Florence are 19, 20 years old. So these kids on their semester abroad are exactly that age, number one. And if they're in high school here, they're a year or two younger. So they understand what sacrifice means. And if it was important a couple of years ago, it's even more important now, because I don't want to hear at all that you're not wearing a mask because it's too difficult. Are we for real? Okay. And as a professor who worked with Yad Vashem said, tell that online to the guy online for the gas chambers in Auschwitz. Wouldn't you switch to wear a mask if it could help somebody and maybe save your own life? Let's be, realistic here. So that's one of the things I'm working on. And I thought it was horrific that the 75th anniversary of the end of World War II came and went and was going to come, and nobody was going to pay attention to it because of COVID. And when you think the end of World War II and the celebrations, what comes to mind? Somebody tell me. Like the celebrations in America for World War II, where did they occur? If you see pictures in your head, where do they occur?
Times Square.
Bingo, you got it. Okay. So I said, okay, I don't care if there's COVID. Those pictures are still going. So I cold called Morgan Stanley and Barclays, and they put up pictures from the World War II Museum in New Orleans. And I coordinated with them, and they put up pictures to commemorate the 75th anniversary of the end of World War II. I also call this little place, maybe no one's heard of, called the New York Stock Exchange. And they've got this like closing bell and this opening bell. And for VE Day, which is May 8th, the closing bell remembered VE Day. The closing bell on September 2nd remembered VJ Day.
Okay.
There you go.
I have one comment and one question. The comment was from Marcia Sugar. She said, thanks so much, Elizabeth, for bringing to life the revealing story about the benevolence and decency of the Italian people during the war. She also studied Italian and always felt a resonance with the Italian culture and people. One question I got directly was, what experience can you share with us about the Italian Jews? Today, she understands that they number about 16,000. Is that, I'm not 100% sure if that person was asking about Italian Jews today. And if that's the number today.
I can't tell you if that's the exact number today. I am not sure. I thought it was higher, but I could be completely wrong. But I know the Jewish community well in Rome and Florence, because Rabbi Pacifici that you saw in my documentary, he unfortunately did perish, as did his wife. He had his wife be in a convent in Florence and his two children in a convent in Florence. And the two children survived. And that's why Riccardo Pacifici exists, because his father was saved. And Riccardo Pacifici was the head of the Roman Jewish community in Rome until about a year ago. He's in my documentary. We're very good friends. Rabbi Levy in Florence is a very good friend. We've even met here in New York. So that's what I can tell you, that those communities are thriving. It is horrific to see the police presence, counterterrorism in front of the synagogues, but that's just the way it is. Unfortunately, when I lived in Florence, I lived a block from the synagogue. Go figure. You can take the girl out of Jericho. You can't take Jericho out of the girl. It was the closest religious anything. Forget about a church in Italy. They have all these little like Madonnas and this little Nick and whatever, these little places, and the little baby Jesuses hanging out. No, the closest anything to my apartment was the synagogue. So whatever. I went to Auschwitz, 6 years ago, as did Riccardo Pacifici, and there's a great story about that. We were on the same flight going back to Rome. We were supposed to have dinner in Krakow that night. Didn't happen. We had an alternative plan. If something came up, we'd have dinner in Rome the next night. So I figured maybe something happened. Some, prime minister wanted him. I could get second fiddle. Okay. No, that was not what happened. He was arrested, I kid you not, in Auschwitz 6 years ago.
Oh my goodness.
So I see him at the airport. I go, Riccardo, ma che successo? What happened last night? And he said, Elizabeth, ero arrestato ieri sera at Auschwitz. I was arrested in Auschwitz last night. And I'm thinking, did I hear him right? It's 7:00 in the morning. I had only like 2 or 3 hours sleep. And this is a bad joke. It's like this, is he making some joke that I'm not in tune to, some humor I'm not sure of? And I'm thinking, no. And I said, say this to me again. He says, no, true. And he explained what happened. They were filming live after the ceremony. They had all the permissions, the documents stamped, everything, whatever. He had his camera crew there. And somehow the guards of Auschwitz saw them and thought they were fake documents and arrested.
Oy, oy, oy. As we would say, oy vey.
Oy vey. And they were put in different rooms in the police station to be spoken to. And I'm sitting there going, no, this didn't really happen. So Riccardo, they were locked in Auschwitz first and foremost. They couldn't get out because it was all locked. So one of the cameramen who was skinny crawled out of a window. You can't make this up. And I tell people, nothing I can tell you I can make up. So the bottom line is 2 a.m, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, the Secretary of State of Foreign Affairs, winds up getting a phone call in Rome at 2 a.m, telling him what happened. And at first he thinks it's a crazy joke too. And he says, don't sign any documents. Phone calls are made. It's snowing, Krakow. They get the Italians at the consulate to translate so they can get them out of jail. Riccardo says, I get back into my hotel room and there's some, kosher food waiting for me.
Oh my goodness.
And there you go. So that's what happened in Auschwitz. Kid you not. It was in the papers.
Okay. And just one more question. And let's see. Do you know the new Italian public TV series that came out in 2020, The War is Over, based on a true story of Jewish orphans housed in Italy after the Holocaust before going to Israel? Are you familiar with that at all?
It's not a documentary video.
It didn't say. The question came.
If it is what I think it is, yes.
Okay.
So I thank Joan for helping organize this, being very persistent, and Toby for being the master of all technology, which I'm all thumbs at. So I thank you for putting that together and making sure all of you are on. And I have a request. And this is my request. I have been, forget me, giving a lecture on something. I could care less. I have attended as an incognito person, invited to many, many, many events, many Yama Show events, many chats, etc., as just somebody in the audience. And it breaks my heart that 99% of the time, everybody in the audience is 60 plus, male and female. I know this is a women's group. And the only time there's youth in there is if their grandparent is a survivor and speaking and what have you. And the survivors, as we all know, are dwindling. And the people who are alive now were children at the time, for the most part. The ones who were teenagers and in their 20s, they're pretty much no longer around, or very few are left. And even 10 years ago, I found it very sad that no matter where I was in the country, listening to other people or looking out at an audience. And I usually traveled with a survivor. I usually traveled with Ursula, and Rochelle has met many of the survivors. So usually when I gave a lecture, people joined me, witnesses. It happened to them. It's not my story. All I did is tell it and put it together at their request. So tonight, considering everybody's home and no one's anywhere, there's no soccer matches, there's no practice music. It's very sad that there aren't youth on things like this. And the never again is never going to work. It's going to disappear because I'm preaching tonight to the choir, as they say. You all know these stories, but the young people don't as much. And when they have an opportunity to meet someone who was there, it's a shame that it's not taken up upon, and I don't mean forced upon them, when maybe a survivor comes to a school and chats. I'm talking about in these kind of events, okay? Not just that. And I think it should happen more. And it would be great if this recording you show to your families and your grandchildren and have something else to talk about, saying there was some goodness amidst evil. And Rochelle's words are much better than mine. She's alive because of what you heard, okay? And we know the evil stories, and there were bad Italians. And 20% of Jews did not survive in Italy because there were bad Italians, okay? But we're focusing on the good stories because we sort of know the bad stories, and we need to give people hope to do the right thing. And if we can get the youth to do the right thing, if we don't teach them, they're not going to know. And this generation is worse than when I started out with the book, because selfies didn't exist 10 years ago. This is all about the selfie selves. And they take a picture and they even fall off a cliff in the Grand Canyon because they're so crazy. So that's my request, is that you take this video and use it in your own families. And show the pictures of the survivors, their pictures, how they were treated, how they were dressed, and compare it to anything you've ever seen before in your own knowledge. And be the difference.
Elizabeth, thank you so much. This was so informative. And I can say personally, I was unaware. I was completely unaware. And I thank you so much for bringing this story to life and for informing us all. And keep doing the good that you're doing. And, hopefully it will spread because we need more people like you to keep doing this work and the good that you're doing. Thank you.
Y'all, thank you. And Roman Kent says, don't be a bystander. So listen to him.
I agree. Thank you for
you all
coming and speaking to us. Thank you.
Okay.